And of course, one of your ideas is the Stratoshield,
Yeah.
which we talked about here today. What is that?
So our Stratoshield idea is an invention that is aimed at saying, what if our efforts to cut CO2 emissions through conservation, alternative energy, and so forth, are too little too late? What if the stuff hits the fan and it starts getting too hot? Now, the problem with global warming is once something starts getting too hot, guess what? You have another 100 years of it because CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a very long time. So we came up with Stratoshield as a way of saying, how could you, on an emergency basis, cool the Earth? And we think it's a simple, relatively cost-effective, pretty practical way that you could intervene and cool Earth off enough to prevent disaster.
And the idea is essentially to put sulfur into the stratosphere. And how would you do that?
So we need to put sulfur particles or some other particle up into the stratosphere, so about 25 kilometers up. In order to do that, we have engineered a system of balloons and hoses. So we literally run a hose to the sky. And our calculations show it's not that big a hose. It's 2 inches in diameter, so it's like a sort of a hefty version of a garden hose. And if we can run that garden hose up to the sky and have the system all working appropriately, we can deliver enough particulate matter to dim the sun in a way you'd never actually see. But you'd make the sun slightly, a % dimmer than it is today. Not even noticeable, but enough that it would erase global warming. And it would allow us to have a normal climate as opposed to the climate that I'm afraid we're going to have if we keep having CO2 emissions run unchecked.
And what about potential negative implications of that sulfur?
So the same kind of sulfur, the reason we've chosen sulfur as the material, we could choose lots of other materials, but sulfur is entirely natural. It's put up by volcanoes. Actually, some sulfur dioxide emissions come directly from the ocean. Some come from other kinds of human technology. So we would be putting less than 1% of what the sulfur that's already in the atmosphere up there. Now, that's important because we know what the impact is. A new material that we would try to qualify, you'd have to wonder, is there a long-term influence we don't know? Is there some unintended consequence of that? You know, you don't want to fix the unintended consequence of CO2 with another unintended consequence. In this case, because sulfur dioxide has been emitted by volcanoes for 4 billion years, we have a pretty good idea as to what it does. And look, I'd prefer not to do it. I'd prefer we weren't in this pickle, but we seem to be, and our political and diplomatic efforts to get out of the problem so far aren't getting any traction.